You heard our poll question was all about the election, asking people if they're going to be voting in this year's general election in Jamaica. In the US, when there's an election, there is always a consideration about, okay, how is this going to affect stocks? How are investors going to react to an election? Does that happen in Jamaica? Do you see stock market moving one way or the other based on what is being discussed on the campaign trail, or which party comes to power?
From my reading, I have seen literature that implies that the party, there is a stock market response to the party that wins. Do I think it is dominant? No. Do I think it's material? No, because especially in the last couple of years, I would say the last 12 years or so, we have had a greater degree of policy continuity between parties. The positions of the parties used to be more radicalized. So I can see where there would have been a greater sentiment effect because of the more divergent policy approaches before and the lack of continuity. But now that we've matured politically, it would be a different paradigm. From a policy perspective, and this is just me speaking as a layman, never mind the color of my curtain. You see, I have the color of the shirt to balance it out, so nobody can say, um, my surroundings are biasing the
It's
discussion.
Jamaica colors, man.
Yeah, man, for sure, Jamaica. um, I do believe that the country is going in the right direction because of the focus on transportation. And transportation is something we sometimes take for granted, but transportation is something that materially drives economic growth because persons who cannot show up on time can't be productive. Productivity begins with movement. And if it is that most of our labor force does not drive, it means that being able to mobilize these persons is a major driver for our productivity, which has been an inhibitor to economic growth in Jamaica. We've had a serious productivity problem. We have a congestion challenge as well. Now, just from a perspective of looking at buses, it takes 8 taxis to mobilize the same amount of persons that one bus can mobilize. So it means that if more buses are on the road, it means that just from a probability standpoint, there's likely to be less congestion because you don't need as many taxis to mobilize the same number of persons. So more buses is actually better for motorists. It's better for fuel consumption, it's better for commute, and it can also be more structured in terms of management of traffic because we already know how taxi drivers operate in Jamaica. Unfortunately, they are a law unto themselves. So that's one perspective. The second perspective is the government has started a program of cutting taxes. So there was a review of GCT done. There's a review of import duty that was done, and there's talks of other reviews to taxes in order for Jamaica to become more tax efficient and to attract more capital. We want to see the government build on these gains and allow Jamaican citizens to keep more of their dollars in their pocket so they can actually spend it back in the economy. But one big move I'd like to see is a reduction in PAYE. We need to reduce PAYE and focus more on GCT so that we can have a more equitable tax system. Because what do I mean? If persons actually have more of their income to spend, that income is actually going to go right back into um, goods and services, which generally carry GCT, and that's going to fund the tax base because our spending on taxes is the government's revenue. And everyone pays GCT, but not everyone pays PAYE. So by shifting away from PAYE and focusing more on GCT, we'll capture a wider net in terms of taxes. So that's one direction I'd like to see us go in. There were some other announcements made that I think are promising, but I want to see how the debates play out so I can
Mm-hmm.
have a more balanced view of what each side has to offer. but I do think we're moving in the right direction. I just think we need to be more aggressive with taxes. And oh yes, there were some announcements around housing and how the number of housing units is going to increase. But one thing I'd like to see us improve in Jamaica is zoning and how we can implement our zoning laws so we can have development that is less chaotic. Because if you look at Wellington in Kingston 6 near Mona, you're seeing a lot of high rises. And it's not that there shouldn't be high rises, but I don't think Wellington was designed to have so many high rises so close to each other in terms of the density. And yes, there's going to be development and modernization, but can the corridors, the surrounding road corridors, manage the
That's true.
population density that's coming in? Because
That's
that's the
true.
thing with infrastructure, it's interconnected. The roads, the sewage, the water, it's all connected. So how can we get zoning laws that are more appropriate to the area so we can have more affordable housing and have a better quality of life? There's no point in living in Kingston 6 if we can barely get to and from because of the traffic, and you have water lockouts because the infrastructure can't support the number of developments in the area.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. I think the other major election issue, Julian, is usually crime. That's a major one that both parties always campaign heavily on what they can do to bring down crime. And notice that the Jamaica Labour Party, well, the government announced a couple months ago that murder rate was down by 30%. And for us in the business community that follow it, crime is a major hindrance to productivity. And it also increases cost from a business standpoint. Look at how much you have to spend on security as a business.
I think most businesses spend, I think security is in the top five for line items in terms of operating expenses for most businesses. So it is significant. But
Yeah,
what I've noticed, Kalila, is that murders are down in 2025 compared to 2024. But the same was true for 2024, so it's actually a trend.
mm-hmm.
So 24 was less than 23, and 25 is less than 24. So that's encouraging. I know the Firearms Act would have had an impact on that and the anti-gun legislation. And the government seems to be very tough on crime from the standpoint of gangs and having gangs become less prominent. We don't hear about one order and those gangs as much anymore compared to 5 and 10 years ago. So we're starting to see a paradigm shift, and I hope it continues.
I hope so, because that's
Yeah,
been one of the main things keeping Jamaica back. When you think about it, Julian, it also deters investors, foreign investment, because who wants to
yeah,
put their money in a country where the people aren't going to be safe,
yeah.
right?
But Kalila, I know this isn't a political program, but I want to encourage the viewers to vote because, and it, I mean, whichever side you vote is up to you, fine. But many divisions are determined by 5 votes, 6 votes, 8 votes, 12 votes. So every vote counts. That's number one. Number two, I've been talking with some of my colleagues, and they've said, boy, they don't want to vote because of the corruption and all of that. But the key to get accountability is to not step away from voting, but to lobby. So OUR and Office of the Contractor General and writing to the relevant channels. For example, the trade unions. These are ways you lobby the government, and these resources are sometimes not utilized enough. I don't think we have enough of a lobbying culture in Jamaica. But to get the government to act, you try to lobby the government. So not voting is not going to cause them to change their behavior. You get change behavior by lobbying. So what actually happens when we don't vote is that we allow other persons to vote on our behalf. That's just how our political system is determined. Even if you disagree with that perspective, that's actually what happens. So if I don't vote, what happens is I give up my opportunity to determine the government, and now Kalila is going to select my government for me. I don't want that to happen, even though Kalila is my friend. I need to choose my own government. So I just want to encourage the persons online who are not sure, make a decision. It makes a difference. The margins are very slim sometimes, and every vote counts. So go out there, read up, listen to the debates, make your decision, but don't step away. You should try and lobby. Stepping away from voting is not going to change the government's attitude, and it's not going to bring the result you want. What you want to achieve is through lobbying, not through not voting.
Agreed.